Okay. It's Wednesday. It's 2:00. It's personal trainer talk. Corey here with Doug, and we are here to answer your questions. Thank you so much for watching this video, sending in your questions. We've got some great ones today. I think we're really going to help you out. If you're a new trainer just getting started, or you're somebody that's been training for a while, that's the main goal of this next little talk, of sharing some information that could help you and ultimately help your clients just provide a better service, and then ultimately, hopefully, increase your income and the better results for your clients. Mr. Blake.
Is it Wednesday again?
Yeah, I know. Time is flying.
But you know what? It's all good, man. It's all good. And we got better than good stuff.
Yeah. All right. Let's do it. So I've got the questions up here too. First one, it looks like it's in from Seattle, Washington. What's the difference between organic foods and GMO food? From Justin Patel in Seattle, Washington. So that's a great question.
That is a very good question. A lot of folks get confused, don't they? Well, I mean, if anybody even cares.
We hope that they do, and that they start to care even more, especially for their clients and organic. So Doug, tell them what's the difference.
Yeah, and we hear this, we kind of hear this all the time, because when I go to the supermarket or whatever the case is, and you look and you see something that says USDA organic, right? And there's an actual label, but then everyone talks about GMOs, right? Genetically modified organisms. It's real simple. I mean, the difference between an organic or a GMO food is simply that an organic food has a regulatory component to it by the USDA, right? United States Department of Agriculture. Any food item that is certified organic, if it's a vegetable product, just as for instance, it had to have been grown in a farm that for, I think it's 3 years, that the farming practices have to have for 3 years not use any herbicides, pesticides, fungicides, insecticides, right? Any of the chemicals that are used in normal standard commercial farming. So there's an actual regulatory component to this, meaning if you grow tomatoes, to get it certified as organic, they have to prove that your farm or wherever you're selling it from, you didn't use any of this stuff.
Yeah.
And you have to also, and there are some other regulations that go along with it.
And how is that different than GMO?
So there's your organic. So you're not eating, quote, poison food that has chemicals all over it, right? So that's a different. GMOs are simply foods that have had some sort of genetic modification to the seeds, generally to the seeds, occasionally to the plant itself, if you're looking at plants. But there's no GMOs themselves do not have any connection to particular pesticides or other chemicals on the food. It simply refers to how the food was altered or modified at the genome or genetic level. Okay, so that's the difference. It's one of the reasons why we always recommend that you eat organic foods. If they've been genetically modified, or if they come from a lineage of genetic modification, that's up to you whether you want to consume them or not. Some folks are just uncomfortable with the fact that foods have had their genetic material modified in some way, shape, or form. That's a personal decision that people make. There is no, as far as I've ever read or seen, there is no, quote, negative issues associated with genetically modified organisms. Again, most of that is simply a concern that people have that you started messing around with with food product, and now you've got this new food product that has a different genetic profile or very minor genomic modifications to it that give it a particular characteristic. Classic example would be grapes, right? You like crunch. I don't know about you, but I love grapes, but that's genetically modified foods.
Right. Haven't they tied back some cancers and things to actually modified GMOs? The pesticides, the herbicides that are being used.
Well, this is where these two concepts come together. The question has always been why quote create a genetically modified organism.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's a number of reasons, because you want to get the characteristics of certain food products out of a particular strain or food. So if you got watermelons, you ever eat watermelons, seedless watermelons?
Sure,
Seedless
I'm
watermelons.
sure.
I mean,
Yeah,
they're great, right? Well,
right.
how do you get a seedless watermelon?
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. Well, yeah, it does make sense, because all you got to do is find those watermelons out of the group of 1,000 watermelons that have fewer seeds, and you continue that process. That is a man-directed genetic modification. On the other hand, I could literally take seeds and I could inject genomic material from another vegetable or whatever it is,
Right.
and that would instill that characteristic. So a classic example would be corn. So there are corns that are known as triple sweet corn. Well, corn itself has very little sugar in it. The normal corn, the maize that you would get in South America, very little converted sugars in it. However, you can take sugar producing or genomic material, inject it into the corn, before it starts to grow, and that corn will have that characteristic. It becomes sweeter, or it will ripen sweeter.
Yeah.
So that's a way of genetically modifying it. But the issues like you're talking about, of whether or not there's cancers associated with the genetically modified organism, if there is, it's not a very strong causation element. But what I was saying was that the reason most food products in the modern day were genetically modified was to deal with the very thing we don't want, which are the pesticides and the chemicals. So
Right.
a plant that you spray pesticides on is going to absorb the pesticides, and a fair amount of that plant material will die. So I spray a field with pesticides, and a lot of that material will die because the stuff is poison. It's killing insects and fungi. So what do? You genetically modify the spinach. You put genetic modifications in it that make the spinach, for instance, now stronger and able to withstand the pesticides. That is one of the reasons why, when you look at non-GMO foods in general, you're going to want to move towards consuming them as well, simply because we know that genetically modified foods were designed, for the most part, to withstand the pesticide that's being sprayed on them. So there's a fair amount more information that you'd have to look at.
Look, for me, I don't want to do GMO food because of the cancerous properties to herbicides, the pesticides that are being used, the chemicals that are being sprayed on that. Like, I understand that a lot of these companies have created this to get the more yield, grow more food and get it to last longer. But the funny thing is, when you ask the difference, Justin, between organic and GMO, I think besides the chemicals that are being used, I think it's like there's a clear taste difference between organic broccoli and, for example, GMO broccoli. And I think there's been many tests, and you'll have to, research this, that have been done, that foods that are not modified have more nutrition. They're denser in their nutrients. But I know that I taste the difference. I taste the difference between an organic, apple and a non-organic apple. I taste the difference between organic chicken and beef and things and not. So for me, and I've always recommended to my clients, please try to consume only organic food. And even if all the science is debating what it causes, what it doesn't cause, look, I'd rather have something natural, so there's no question, right? Like, what if in 20 years, then the studies, there's enough data that shows, wow, eating this type of food that sat in this, pesticide, great. I'd rather just not even have that chance. I think that's why
we have to separate the two. If you go with organic, you never have to worry, because it's the organic label that says no pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, insecticides. Just because a product is GMO, a GMO product can be organic. GMO products can be not organic.
Mm.
As long as you stay with an organic food, it's the organic label that specifies that the way it was grown.
Yes.
What those guys have done to it genetically, by the way, there's no fruit, there's no vegetable that we eat today that has not been genetically modified. Literally nothing on the human table, American table, has
Sure.
not been modified. Literally nothing. So the fact that it's been genetically altered in some way, shape, or form, the jury for me is out on that. I'm not too concerned. I stay focused on the organic part of it, which is the chemical issue. So we always deal with organic foods and whatever the GMO elements are. So, but it's a good question.
Justin, I hope that was helpful. That is, the difference between the two, the way that we see, and we would always suggest that you recommend to your clients simply eating organic. It's just better overall. If nothing else, it tastes much better and give you peace of mind. All right, Mr. Blake, what do we got up next?
You ready for the second one? How? And by the way, this comes from Brooke. Brooke is in Gainesville, Florida. Okay, that's only what? Only a couple hours.
Just a little bit.
How should I charge clients by the session, or sell them as packages? So how do you do that?
Yeah, so technically, I wouldn't do either. We like to call it a series today, reoccurring. So a session is like a one-time thing, a block. A package is usually a block of sessions. We like to look at it as a series of sessions, which reoccur. So the most effective way for the client and for you as the trainer is a reoccurring setup. And so the way that this works is really pretty simple. Instead of selling them, for example, if they're doing twice a week for a month, instead of selling them 8 sessions, right, 4 weeks in a month, let's use each month, where you have to go back to them every month and sell them another 8 sessions, which, by the way, blows my mind when I still hear trainers out there doing this. Instead of doing that, you sit down with a client at the consultation point at the enrollment and say, look, I'm going to set you up with a training program, series, membership, whatever you want to call it, that renews every month, every 30 days, month to month, until you want to finish. And so you give them, we like to give our clients a 7-day out so they could cancel at any time with 7-day notice for their membership before their next billing, but it recurs every month. And so that 8 sessions, they know on, let's just say today's date, the 24th of each month, they're going to get billed for those 8 sessions until they ask to stop. And for the client, it's just easier. It's just easier that way. And for you, it's absolute no brainer. One, you can kind of budget. You know what you have on reoccurring coming in. 2, you don't have the bill collector mentality each month where you have to go and ask the client for that. And 3, the client doesn't have to feel that either. And it's so time consuming. Just think of it this way. The average successful trainer right now has on average about 25 clients. 25 clients, just do the simple math, each month having to go ask them to process another payment. So we don't recommend that you sell a package where it's a finite time and then you have to pay again. We don't recommend that you sell sessions. We recommend that you sell a series, and they could cancel that series with a 7-day. Some trainers do 30-day. I recommend 7, but basically, and it just recurs. So instead of going back to those 25 clients every month, you're only addressing the 2 to 3 that are ready to finish. For whatever reason, they're moving, they can't afford it anymore. You only have to address those 2 to 3. All the others, you don't even have to have a conversation. They stay on the schedule and you keep training them. So, Brooke, I hope that was helpful. That's the most effective method that we're seeing now in the industry and how we take care of the personal training. It not only is more effective financially, but it's also gets the client in the mentality that they are committed to a program and their results and training. And we do recommend a minimum of 3 months, no doubt. So hopefully that was helpful. Doug, any other thoughts on that?
I was going to ask you, because students do ask us, well, what if clients miss a session, right? Are they paying for 8 sessions? How do you work that when a client misses 2 sessions or 3 sessions in the month and they then ask you, well, don't I get recoup those sessions?
Yeah, it's the same policy that you would have generally with a package or selling sessions directly. And most common is a 24-hour notice. So if they give you a 24-hour notice in any scenario of selling sessions, packages, or series, you don't charge the client. So if they give you 24-hour notice, that's what we recommend. In a series, it's no different. The way that it works is that, let's just say that they're out for 2 sessions, 2 workouts this month. They give you 24-hour notice. They have those 2 sessions on their account. No different if they had bought those sessions or bought a package, those 2 sessions are still on their account. When they finish training, they can use whatever sessions that they never used, or if they ever build up a month worth of sessions, so in this case, in the example, 8 sessions that they gave proper notice for, then they can request not to be billed for the next month and just use their accumulated sessions. And then the billing picks back up the next month. This is the most effective practice for clients that miss sessions. Now, I will just let you guys know, like, it's always best to rule on the side of a client whether or not to charge them for a session if they give you less than 24-hour notice. I learned a lesson one day many moons ago, probably 15 years ago, where one of my favorite clients like literally missed a session and had done it multiple times. And I told him, hey, look, got to charge you for that session. But if you're able to give me 24-hour notice, he got so upset. He got so upset over that. And it was really unfortunate. And for me, I lost a client, and it was as simple as that. And very rare scenario. And this is a one-off scenario, but if there's any thought, any discrepancy, always err on the side of the client and just give them the session. It's not worth losing that customer or having ill will. Now, don't let them abuse it. I'm not saying that, but if there is any kind of gray area, always err on the side of a client and don't charge them for a session without notice that they didn't train, of course.
Right.
I hope that was helpful. I think we've got time for one more question. So we got a question here from Giovanni Price from Laredo, Texas. In program design, does the order of exercises matter?
Yes. Have a great week.
So yes, it does. Why? I mean, for me, when I first started exercising, I tried it, I tested it, and I didn't care what others said. I wanted to feel the difference. For some reason, when I would burn out some smaller muscles, and then I tried to, for example, bench press or something like that, just wasn't able. I wasn't as strong. And there's other good reasons behind it. Doug could share with you in the next 30 seconds.
Yeah. So in program design, the question is, what's the outcome? What are you trying to get? And in general, with resistance training, what are we trying to do? Right. With resistance training, we're trying to work, as hard as you can for as long as you can, whatever the case, if you're doing HIIT training, whatever the scenario is. So yes, in program design, the order of the exercises is generally going to go from larger, right? It's pretty simple, straightforward, larger muscle groups to the smaller muscle groups. But there's a little bit of a toss up in there, depending on how you break up your, what would be called a split routine. Look, if you're doing a full body workout, then for sure, the most important thing you would do is start with larger muscle groups. So, generally you're going to do quads, glutes, hamstrings, the larger muscles of the trunk and the lower body, and then move to the generally the smaller muscle groups. That's like a full body workout, right? And right, so chest, pecs, and back. Yeah, because you don't want to be doing dumbbell curls, fatigue out your biceps, and then go try doing pull-ups or rows, because now the quote smaller muscle that is part of that functional kinetic chain is already pre-weakened. Now I know there's some really smart bodybuilder out there going, yeah, but I like to do pre-exhaustion. Remember that?
Joe Weider pre-exhaustion. Giovanni. I hope that was helpful. Listen, always largest muscle groups first. Yeah. Guys, have a great week. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you have a question, comment it below. If you enjoyed this, you got any value, subscribe, join us each week. Thank you so much for being here, and we will see you next Wednesday, 2:00 Eastern time.